You really have to stop and think about the sheer paradox of Netflix. It's just an incredible story.
It really is. The scale of the transformation is mind-boggling.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Less than 2 decades ago, like 2007, this company was basically a logistics company using the U.S. Postal Service.
Right. They were mailing out DVDs in little red envelopes and just, hoping people would send them back.
And now we're talking about a global entertainment empire. What is it, 240 million subscribers around the world?
Over 240 million, yeah. And they're number 155 on the Fortune 500 list. There are even credible reports they're looking to buy a major Hollywood studio.
It's an insane leap. From mail-order movies to potentially owning a piece of legacy Hollywood.
And that whole journey, that ascent, wasn't just, a typical corporate success story. It was built on a series of just breathtaking risks. It really is the textbook story of market disruption.
Okay, but that brings us to the real question at the heart of our deep dive today. This company, the one that literally invented the streaming playbook, that killed the video store.
They're now in this incredibly crowded market, fighting against the very giants they used to license shows from. So the question is it possible that the pioneer of streaming will be the first one to, collapse?
It's a real possibility. And it's not just the competition. What's so fascinating and kind of ironic is that the very things that kept them in the news for 2 decades, the strategies that built their brand,
Right.
those are the things that are now turning on them. And you can really boil this whole existential threat down to 2 main pillars.
Okay, so what are they? Because it feels like the problems inside the company are just as big as the competition outside.
Absolutely. The first pillar is its constant history of controversy. They're always in the headlines, but it's starting to alienate their audience.
And the second?
The second, and it's tied to the first, is this very consistent, some would say aggressive, push of what a lot of people, critics, consumers are calling a woke agenda.
Or more specifically, an LGBTQ agenda, right?
Yeah.
Especially into their kids' content. Exactly. And when they get any pushback, the corporate response is always the same. It's this generic statement about, supporting diversity and artistic freedom.
Yeah, as if the cultural backlash is just a sign of their own bravery, not a sign of a bad business decision.
Precisely. They're using artistic freedom as a shield, but it's a shield against very legitimate business criticism about their strategy.
So that's our mission for this deep dive. We're going to trace it all back to the beginning, look at the big strategic mistakes they're making now, and really dig into how their role in the culture war is starting to hit their bottom line. Okay, let's rewind. Way back. 1997. The founders are Mark Randolph and Reed Hastings. And they didn't start out with this grand vision of changing the world.
Not at all. They just wanted to fix a broken market, which was home entertainment. And at the time, that market was totally dominated by one name.
Blockbuster.
Blockbuster was king. But, it was the king of making people miserable.
The late fees.
The late fees. So Netflix's brilliance wasn't just mailing DVDs. It was identifying and removing every single thing that made renting from Blockbuster a pain.
But that model, mailing discs back and forth, that required so much patience from the customer. You had to wait days for a movie to show up, mail it back, wait again. How do they sell that as a better experience?
By getting rid of the punishment. The key, the absolute game changer, was no late fees.
Right.
Blockbuster's business model was basically built on you forgetting to return a movie. It was pure profit from your mistake.
Yeah.
Netflix just said, keep it as long as you want. No handling fees, no shipping fees on the return. They basically monetize patience.
But the logistics of that must have been a nightmare for a startup. The warehouses, the postage on every envelope, tracking all that inventory. It sounds like a money pit.
Oh, it was. They had to be incredibly meticulous. They set up all these regional fulfillment centers, developed their own software to predict what movies people would want. And it was that system, that complex mail order machine, that started getting them noticed.
Which brings us to the Jeff Bezos story.
Exactly. The classic anecdote. Bezos, the Amazon guy, he wasn't just attracted to the idea of renting movies. He was reportedly fascinated by their logistics.
The delivery and return system, the fulfillment loop, as they call it.
That's it. And he offered them $16 million for the company.
$16 million. In the late 90s, that was a fortune. They could have just cashed out right there.
But they said no. And you have to admire the confidence it took to walk away from that money when they weren't even profitable yet. The story goes, and who knows if it's corporate legend or fact, that they might have rejected the deal partly because one of them had a bad experience with an Amazon order.
You're kidding.
Imagine turning down a future billion-dollar payday, because a book arrived late,
Yeah.
but it shows how much they believed in their own customer service.
So saying no to Bezos forced them to make some big changes just to survive. The first one was moving to a subscription model.
A stroke of genius. Instead of renting one movie at a time, you pay a flat monthly fee for unlimited rentals. It made the service sticky. You were locked in.
But that must have been so expensive for them at first. They're covering all the shipping costs for unlimited movies for just one fee.
Immensely taxing. And this was all happening during the dot-com boom. They had a website, but the money was so tight. I mean, the sources say they got so desperate they tried to sell the company again.
And nobody wanted it. Not even Blockbuster, who famously laughed them out of the room.
Yeah, the ultimate what-if story in business. Blockbuster just saw the internet as like a fad. But Netflix held on, and by 2003, they finally turned their first profit.
And then things started to scale. By 2005, they were shipping 1 million DVDs a day.
1 million a day. That's when you knew the logistics machine they built was for real.
But the mail was never the end game. The real revolution, the moment that changed everything, was in 2007, the launch of the online streaming platform.
The timing was just perfect. Broadband internet was finally becoming common in people's homes. And critically, they didn't just shut down the DVD business, they ran both at the same time.
The dual system.
Exactly. It gave them a safety net. If streaming failed, they still had the mailers. It was a really smart, risk-averse way to pivot.
And the proof that it was the right move came in 2009.
The tipping point. For the first time, streaming made more money than DVD rentals. The digital age of Netflix had officially begun.
And that gave them so much power. By 2010, they had millions of users ready to stream, and they used that audience as leverage against Hollywood.
They started signing these huge deals with Warner Bros., Universal, 20th Century Fox.
Why would the big studios ever agree to that? To give their content to this upstart?
Because Netflix found a way to make them more money. The deal was brilliant for both sides. A new movie would play in theaters, and then just 1 month later, it would be on Netflix.
So they were capturing that second wave of audience, the people who don't go to the cinema.
Exactly. It was all new revenue for the studios. And for Netflix, it gave them a massive, constantly updated library of popular movies. It made the subscription a no-brainer.
And this all laid the groundwork for their empire phase, which really kicked off in 2013 with original content.
Right. They realized they couldn't rely on other people's shows forever. They had to go from being a content distributor to a content creator.
And their first big one was Orange is the New Black,
which was a cultural phenomenon. It wasn't just a hit show. It proved Netflix could make television that got people talking, stuff that was different from what you'd see on network TV.
It was a signal to the whole industry.
Massive signal. It told everyone that Netflix wasn't just a place to rewatch old sitcoms. It was a creative powerhouse. And they just exploded from there, even making shows for huge franchises like Marvel and Star Wars.
The growth was just exponential. By 2016, just 3 years later, they had over 126 original shows and movies.
And their strategy was so clear and so successful. They used the licensed shows, the comfort food like The Office and Friends, to get you in the door.
Right, the bait.
And then the originals, the shows you couldn't get anywhere else, that was the switch. That's what kept you paying every month. It was a brilliant model. But that feeling of total dominance, that peak in 2016, it might have led to a bit of complacency. And that's where the cracks started to show.
Which brings us perfectly to today. We're moving from this story of unstoppable growth to, well, a story of defense. The streaming world isn't Netflix's playground anymore. It's completely saturated.
And the deep irony is that their biggest competitors now are the same studios they used to partner with.
Disney, Warner Brothers, Paramount.
All of them. They looked at Netflix's success in 2010 and eventually realized, wait a minute, we're giving away billions. So they took their content back and launched their own services.
And losing shows like The Office and Friends left a huge hole in their catalog. So now, the expert analysis says Netflix isn't really focused on gaining new subscribers anymore.
Not in the same way. The game has changed. Now it's all about churn. They're desperately trying to prevent the subscribers they have from leaving. They've gone from offense to defense.
And a lot of those losses aren't just because of competition, they're self-inflicted wounds.
Absolutely. Let's start with their content strategy. Mistake number 1. Canceling beloved shows out of nowhere.
Yes, and we're not talking about small shows, we're talking about shows with really passionate, vocal fan bases.
The campaigns to save shows like Warrior Nun or Sense8 were massive. And when you cancel a critically acclaimed show like the OA on a huge cliffhanger,
You're sending a message.
you're sending a clear message to your customers. We don't care about the story or your loyalty. We only care about our internal data.
And that does more than just annoy the fans of that one show. It makes people hesitant to start any new Netflix show. Why get invested if they might just pull the plug?
Exactly. You're actually encouraging them to go somewhere else. You're thinking, well, HBO Max will finish House of the Dragon. Disney Plus isn't going to cancel a Marvel show halfway through. You're literally pushing subscribers to your competitors.
Which leads to mistake number 2, their release model, the binge model.
The binge model, for years it was their signature thing. But the contrast between that and the weekly release from their rivals is just so stark now.
With the Netflix model, a whole season drops at once. It explodes online, everyone talks about it for a weekend, and then, poof, it's gone. The cultural conversation moves on.
It's a sugar rush. It's not sustained interest. Think about Squid Game, a global sensation, right? But the conversation was intense for a week, and then it just died. People were left confused about when a new season was even coming.
Whereas HBO Max has perfected the opposite. They drop their big shows on Sunday night, Euphoria, The Last of Us, House of the Dragon.
And that weekly drop forces a conversation. It creates anticipation. People spend all week talking about what happened, sharing theories, making memes. It keeps the show and the platform relevant for months, not days.
It's the old water cooler effect, but for the digital age.
Right. It provides cultural weight. Netflix just provides a cultural sprint. And the crazy thing is, they know this, but they're reportedly doubling down on the binge or volume release for other big shows. It's like they're philosophically allergic to a model that's proven to work better.
And that stubbornness brings us to probably the biggest self-inflicted wound of all. Mistake number 3, the password sharing crackdown.
Oh, that was just disastrous. I mean, for years, they practically encouraged it. They even tweeted, "Love is sharing a password."
Right. It helped them become ubiquitous. And then suddenly they did a complete 180 that felt like an attack on their own customers.
Let's just break down the rule because it's so absurd. Every account has to connect to a home Wi-Fi source. And if you're away from that Wi-Fi for more than a month,
Like a college student or someone who travels for work.
your account gets blocked.
Yeah.
Unless you pay extra to add a new home.
It just shows such a disconnect from how people actually live. Why are you punishing mobility? I'm a paying subscriber. Why does it matter if I'm watching at my house or my parents' house?
It was seen as purely punitive. And the rollout was a technical mess. People with VPNs or complex networks got blocked, even when they were the only user.
So in their attempt to get money from people who weren't paying, they ended up losing a ton of people who were paying.
A massive loss of subscribers. It was a huge miscalculation.
And then the last piece of the puzzle is the ad-supported plan, which, okay, it's a cheaper option, but it also completely erases what used to make Netflix special.
Absolutely. Netflix used to be the premium ad-free experience. That was their whole brand. Now, Disney Plus has ads, HBO Max has ads, Hulu has ads, and Netflix has ads.
So when you add it all up, the canceled shows, the broken release model, the password crackdown, the ads, the question becomes what actually makes Netflix different anymore? They feel less like an innovator and more like the most restrictive player on the field.
So now we get into the other side of the threat. It's not just about business strategy. It's about their brand, their image, and the controversies that seem to constantly follow them.
And this is the core of the paradox, right? The controversy keeps them in the news, which is free marketing in a way.
For sure. But at the same time, it's actively damaging their brand with huge segments of the audience, especially in a country as polarized as this one.
The main accusation you hear from critics is that they are relentlessly pushing a woke agenda, specifically an LGBTQ agenda, and that it's particularly noticeable in their content for kids.
And their defense is always the same boilerplate PR response. We support artistic freedom. We want to tell diverse stories. It's a defense that doesn't actually engage with the criticism.
But it feels like the controversies aren't just limited to the content itself. It's the whole ecosystem around the brand.
That's a really important point. Brand adjacency. You have the really serious situation with two of their biggest stars, David Harbour and Millie Bobby Brown, and the harassment case filed against him by her.
I mean, these are the faces of Stranger Things, one of their biggest global hits.
Exactly. And the source material we looked at points to this wider worrying trend of actors associated with these big platforms and franchises getting caught up in these kinds of serious issues. It tarnishes the whole brand by association.
It just creates this cloud of controversy. But the single biggest firestorm, the one that actually hit their stock price, involved Elon Musk.
Right. This is where the culture war went from online chatter to a direct financial threat. It started when Musk announced he was canceling his subscription.
But he didn't just cancel it quietly.
No. He went on X, his own platform, and basically told millions of people to cancel theirs too, specifically for the health of their children.
And the specific show that sparked this was an animated kids show, right?
Yeah, a show called Dead End Paranormal Park. The central issue for Musk and his followers was that the main character is transgender, and the show is very open about it.
So Musk framed this as Netflix pushing, in his words, woke propaganda and an LGBTQ agenda on children.
He did. And he didn't stop at the content. He went after their hiring practices, suggesting they were prioritizing diversity quotas over actual skill, looking for, quote, others in the sex field on a resume.
The fallout was immediate. The cancel Netflix hashtag started trending.
And it had a real, measurable financial impact. Their stock price took a noticeable dip. It wasn't just online anger anymore, it was spooking investors. The culture war had officially hit their balance sheet.
And of course, it immediately blew up into a much larger fight.
Oh yeah. On one side, you had Musk's critics calling him a massive hypocrite.
The free speech absolutist trying to cancel a streaming service for its content.
Exactly. And then you had a strong response from the LGBTQ community and its allies. They argued that this kind of representation is positive and necessary, that seeing diverse characters on screen, especially for kids, promotes acceptance.
So they saw it as a win for inclusion, not propaganda.
And this just perfectly illustrates the tightrope Netflix is trying to walk. They're making content choices that earn them intense loyalty from one part of the market,
while inviting the fury and the boycotts of another very large part of the market. And that strategy gets even riskier when you remember their new ad-supported plan.
That's a fantastic point. How does the culture war content affect their ad business?
Well, advertisers are generally risk-averse. They want to sell cars and toothpaste to everyone. They don't want their brand showing up next to something that's at the center of a massive online boycott.
It makes Netflix a toxic environment for them. Why would a mainstream brand want to advertise on a platform where cancel Netflix is trending?
So the very thing they use to get attention controversy is actively undermining their new crucial revenue stream.
Precisely. And that generic defense about artistic freedom means nothing to an advertiser who's worried about their brand safety. It doesn't solve the financial problem. They are trying to win a culture war and a business war at the same time, and it's not clear they can do both. Tag conclusion and final thought.
Okay, let's try to pull all these threads together. We've seen this incredible journey from mailing DVDs to global domination. But today, the empire is facing these two huge connected threats.
On the one hand, you've got just brutal market competition, which they've made worse with their own mistakes.
Right. The rigid release model canceling shows people love, and that just deeply unpopular password crackdown, the home Wi-Fi rule, all of it actively pushes people away.
And on the other hand, you have these constant polarizing culture wars. Their content strategy, what critics call the woke agenda, it generates headlines, sure, but it also damages the brand and alienates a huge chunk of the audience they need.
So the final analysis seems pretty stark. They're caught between two contradictory needs. They have to do bold, controversial things to stand out in a crowded market.
But those exact same things are eroding the loyalty they need to survive. The generic defense of artistic freedom just isn't a viable business strategy anymore. It doesn't stop people from canceling, and it doesn't make advertisers feel safe. They're fighting on too many fronts at once.
Which brings us to our final provocative thought for you to think about. Consider the full arc of their story. This company went from a model that was built on trust and patients trusting you to mail a DVD back without a penalty to a model of total corporate control, strictly dictating where and how you can watch the service you pay for. So does that fundamental shift from being the consumer's friend to being the corporate gatekeeper signal that the end of their era is inevitable? Are they now simply too big and too controlling to survive in the very world they created?